Welcome to the Explainer. Look, if you're working with advanced AI, you already know that just typing a few words into a text box barely scratches the surface of what these models can really do. Today, we're going to upgrade you from a casual AI chatter to a masterful prompt engineer. We're breaking down the optimal strategies for interacting with today's absolute top-tier models, specifically Anthropic's Claude, Meta's Llama, and Mistral. By the end of this explainer, you'll have a rock-solid structural framework to unlock incredibly precise, professional, and honestly, autonomous outputs. Okay, let's dive into this because this quote perfectly captures the current state of AI adoption. When you just throw a basic, unrefined question at an advanced model, even a powerhouse like Claude Opus, it defaults to a basic, generic response. It's like having a Ferrari and only driving it in first gear around a parking lot. Most users are wasting massive potential simply because they haven't learned how to communicate their intent clearly. Well, we're going to change that right now. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. Beyond the basic prompt. 2. Universal rules. 3. Speaking Claude's XML language. 4. Mastering Mistral and Llama. 5. The power of Claude code. And 6. Your AI-powered future. Think of each section as a brand new, highly specialized tool we're adding to your master toolkit. Section 1. Beyond the basic prompt. The problem with generic inputs. Let's compare the bad habits we all start with against the engineered precision we actually need. Take a classic generic prompt, something like, describe a futuristic city. The AI basically has to guess what you care about. Do you want a dystopia, a utopia, a focus on tech? Now contrast that with a highly specific prompt. We add a timeline 100 years from now, and we explicitly constrain the output to focus only on architecture, transportation, and environmental features. The difference in the quality of your output directly correlates to the specificity of your input. This is the whole foundation of prompt engineering, replacing ambiguity with explicit, clear direction. Moving right along to Section 2, Universal Rules of Prompting, the Master Toolkit. Before we look at how to talk to specific models like Claude or Llama, there are universal rules that just work across the board. So the crucial point here is that mastering these 5 foundational practices will immediately reduce errors in your work. First up, assign a specific role. Tell the AI it's an elementary teacher or, a senior data analyst. Second, use few-shot learning, which is really just a fancy academic way of saying, give the AI an example of what you want. Third, employ chain-of-thought reasoning. Fourth, be direct and specific. Tell the model exactly what to do rather than what not to do. And finally, iterative refinement. You use the AI's responses as feedback to adjust your very next prompt. Let's actually pause on that third bullet point for a second. I want you to think about this question. Why would you explicitly ask an AI to think before it answers? I mean, it's software, right? It processes everything instantly anyway. Well, not exactly. This is known as chain-of-thought prompting. When you instruct an AI to literally explain its reasoning step by step before giving you the final answer, you're actually forcing the model to break down complex logical or mathematical tasks into manageable chunks. It fundamentally changes how the language model processes the information. This drastically improves its accuracy and is absolutely crucial for reducing hallucinations. Okay, Section 3, Speaking Claude's XML language. Tailoring prompts for Anthropic's models. We've covered the universal rules, but here's where it gets really fun. Different models require completely different syntaxes based on how they were trained. Now, what's really interesting here is how Claude operates. We physically organize the data because Claude has been heavily fine-tuned to understand XML syntax. By wrapping your text in tags, like a text tag or an output tag, you create a hard, clear boundary between your instructions and your input data. This completely stops Claude from getting confused about what it's supposed to read versus what it's supposed to do. And Claude doesn't just read text, it processes massive data sets. When you upload a CSV and ask for a visualization, Claude automatically activates its built-in analysis tool. This is a JavaScript sandbox where Claude literally writes and executes its own code, using libraries like D3.js or Math.js directly in the background. It crunches the numbers, generates the visualization, and hands you the insights, all without you having to write a single line of code. It's a real game changer. Section 4, Mastering Mistral and Llama, Leveraging OpenWeight's Powerhouses. While Claude is incredible for data, Mistral's mixed-draw models absolutely crush it for creative text and conversational context. And then, of course, there's Meta's Llama. Let's look at the Llama 3.1 family. It comes in three sizes: 8 billion, 70 billion, and the massive 405 billion parameter flagship model. What makes the instruct-tuned versions of these models so incredibly powerful is that they are highly optimized for tool calling. That means they're built perfectly for agentic use cases where the AI actually needs to use search engines or mathematical tools to go solve problems. Let's see how this builds into those universal rules we talked about earlier, specifically for Llama. Remember when we discussed assigning roles? Llama requires highly explicit role-based prompts to maintain consistent outputs. For instance, instead of just asking for a description of the Eiffel Tower, we tell Llama, "You are a virtual tour guide from 1901." We then give it a 5-step sequence to follow and literally tell it to include 2 jokes at the end. This level of explicit instruction gives Llama the exact context it needs to deliver a flawless response. And Llama 3.1 can handle a massive amount of context. It has an extended context window of 128,000 tokens. To put that into perspective, think of a context window like the size of your physical desk. A small desk, well, it can only hold a few documents at a time before things start falling off the edge. Llama's 128K context window is like having a gigantic conference table. You can dump entire books, massive code bases, or complex documents right onto it, and the model can hold all of that information in its mind at the exact same time. Next up, Section 5, the power of Claude Code, transitioning to agentic workflows. This is where we completely move past chatting in a little browser window and step into the cutting-edge, terminal-based world of autonomous agents. Get this. As of December 2025, Anthropic owned a staggering 54% of the enterprise coding market. Claude Code has literally become a multi-billion-dollar standard. Why? Because instead of just auto-completing lines of code for you, Claude Code takes on entire projects autonomously. You describe what you want and it plans, executes, and just checks in with you when it needs to. A massive part of making this workflow function is the claude.md file. Think of this as the project's long-term memory. Instead of pasting your universal rules, constraints, and specific coding conventions into the prompt every single time you start a new session, Claude just automatically reads this markdown file at launch. It remembers exactly how your project works across every single session. And this brilliantly illustrates the real magic of agentic workflows, subagents. When a project gets too big, the main Claude session can actually spawn a secondary Claude instance, a subagent, to handle a focused task, like searching a massive codebase or running a testing suite. The subagent goes off, works in its own separate context window, and reports back when it's totally done. This is exactly how you tackle massive projects without hitting a context wall. It's quite literally an AI managing a team of AI workers. And finally, Section 6, your AI-powered future, from prompt writer to product manager. Let's bring this whole shebang together and look at what these advanced tools actually mean for your daily workflow. This quote right here from a developer perfectly sums up the experience of mastering these models. When you start using XML tags for Claude, assigning specific roles to Llama, and leveraging agentic tools like Claude Code, you stop fighting the AI. You stop wasting time on generic, boring outputs. You get things done faster, with way fewer errors, and the work fundamentally becomes more enjoyable. You transition from being just a coder or a writer into a product manager directing a highly capable team. Which leaves us with this final thought. You now know the universal rules, the specific model syntaxes, and the absolute power of agentic tools. The framework is right in front of you. So how will you apply these structural frameworks to your next project? How will you make that shift from being a simple prompt writer to a product manager of your own AI agents? Dive in, start experimenting, and take control of the incredible tools right at your fingertips.